And we might get started on the last Transport and Infrastructure Committee meeting for this year, for 2023. We've got a full complement of member councillors, as well as we welcome our Deputy Mayor, Councillor, I was going to say Doctor, Councillor Dr Gates and Councillor Glenn Tozer. Thanks for joining us. There's no apologies, there's no leave of absence. If I may star the minutes, unless anybody had any concerns that they wanted to raise with that. I've got no conflict of interest declarations so far. And we've got Transport and Infrastructure Action Plan, which is starred. Reports and presentations, we've got the State of the Transport Network, which there'll be a presentation for, and then we've got 2 closed session items. Did we want to star any of those items? Councillor Vorster.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. With item 7.2, I'm happy to have that starred, although I have a general question about traffic signal systems. So if you're happy, I'm happy to star it, so long as perhaps in general business I could just ask a question.
No worries at all. Everyone else is okay with that? So we'll star 7.2. So if I could have a mover for 3.1, 5.1 and 7.2.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I'm happy to star 7.1. So. No, 7.1 starred as well. So, councillors, the only unstarred item there is 6.1. So, if I could have a mover. I'm not. Okay, so I'm happy to move those. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Owen Jones. All those in favour? That is carried. And then we will go to presentation on State of the Transport Network report for 2023, please. Welcome, Alison. We'll let you, councillors, if you've got questions as we go through, it might be easier for Alison to give her report, and if you could just jot down your questions as we're, and then we can ask those at the end. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, councillors, and welcome to the much anticipated State of the Transport Network report for 2023. First, I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to meet with officers and discuss your thoughts about the report. It is an important report for us all, and we want to make sure we get it right. So some of the key points that were raised include the report needs to be a health check to ensure that we're investigating the right projects in the right areas. It needs to be a strategic report, responding to a whole of city issues rather than down to a divisional level. It needs to identify city shaping and LGIP projects, and it needs to include the importance of active infrastructure, active transport infrastructure, and any issues around the uptake of personal mobility devices or PMDs. So we've attempted to address all of these responses. Some of the feedback that we didn't get an opportunity to address was reducing the content in the report and making the report shorter. But we have some ideas how we can do that in the future, and hopefully we'll address those in subsequent reports. Further comments were around keeping the report consistent with previous years. So we've done that, and we've opted to use each of the modal plans that support the transport strategy. But we've also included a short demo at the end of this presentation on our transport data program. Initially, we were going to do a live demo, and then we thought, well, what could go wrong with that? So what we have is a 6-minute video that I'll ask my colleague Phil Carves to talk to. So the Gold Coast continues to be one of the fastest growing local government areas in Australia. On the screen is the medium series projections from the Queensland Government Statistician's Office. It shows that in the last financial year, population on the Gold Coast grew by 2.13%, or 13,480 people to be exact. This is consistent with the previous 20-year average of 2.5%. The Northern Gold Coast contributed about 50% of that growth from the areas Ormeau to Oxenford, and the coastal areas of Surfers Paradise and Broadbeach to Burleigh gained around 20% of that population growth. We need to continue working towards an integrated transport and land use outcome to make sure that we respond to this population growth, and we continue to talk to our planning friends to ensure this occurs. The Transport Snapshot is data from the most recent Queensland Household Travel Survey, or HTS. The average number of trips and weekday travel distance has reduced since the baseline from the 2014 year. This could be attributed to people working from home. So the amount of people that work from home has tripled since 2016 and could be supporting the changes in this travel behaviour. On the flip side, total distance and weekday trips have increased, and that could be attributed to the increase in population. What this is telling us, it's really important that we continue on changing people's behaviour to more sustainable transport options and keep people off the road network so we can respond accordingly to that increase in population as that continues. Our mode share targets are what we strive to achieve from our Transport Strategy 2031. What it's showing us here is encouraging that we have a decreased reliance on the private motor vehicle from the baseline data of 2011. And we're heading closer towards our public transport target of 12%, and we're heading back towards the pre-COVID public transport mode share of 3.6%. Again, cycling as a mode has increased from the baseline of 2011 towards a 6% target, albeit a little bit slower than the others. And walking as a mode of transport, it continues to be the shining star and continues to be greater than our target of 8% in the 2031 strategy, which is fantastic. Our travel volumes on the road network. No surprise, we continue to see growth on some of our key strategic corridors in the north. So Helensvale Road, Hope Island Road and the newly named Coomera Link Road have all seen increases year on year. In the central area, Alexander Drive increased by 14%, Ashmore Road 11% and Salerno 5%. And in the south, Old Coach Road again has an increase of 8% on the road network, which is similar to last year. The tables on the right show the traffic volumes. That's 2023 data for city roads and 2022 data for the TMR roads there. These charts or these maps show the performance of the road network. So we've identified the levels of service based on travel times compared to posted speed. You can see there the green is level of service A to C. The yellow is level of service D, which is considered an acceptable level of service. And then E to F, which is notated there in the orange and the red, we're starting to see major delays on the road network. This data comes from, it's the average travel times for the AM peak to the left and the PM peaks to the right across the year from January to October. So we can see there are a couple of roads there that have sustained poor levels of service. Ashmore Road between Tiwi Street and Bundle Road, Christine Avenue eastbound from Bermuda Street to the Gold Coast Highway, the Gold Coast Highway southbound from T.E. Peters to Hooker Boulevard, Robina Parkway southbound from Cheltenham Drive to the M1, and Yawalpa Road westbound from Swan Road to the M1. All of these warrant further investigation, and we continue to look at those as part of our broader infrastructure, road infrastructure program. So taking all the information as well as the LGIP program, we then develop our intersection upgrade program. So looking at where the high growth areas are and where the hotspots are on the network, as well as LGIP, and that's what forms our infrastructure plan moving forward. This year we've delivered 4 intersection upgrades along with main roads. So we have ourselves completed Mirrabina Drive, Creek Street intersection upgrade, Lillypilly Drive, Coolabah Street, and also Scottsdale Drive, Prospect Court intersection in Robina. As well as that, the Department of Transport and Main Roads have delivered the interchange upgrade at Exit 41. There are also 8 major transport infrastructure projects currently underway or being constructed by ourselves and Transport and Main Roads, and the City has an additional 9 road intersection upgrades planned to commence in the 2023-2024 financial year. It's important to validate that we're building the right projects in the right locations. So we have taken Mirrabina Drive as our case study for this year's report. And what it's showing is that when we did the cost-benefit analysis, an investment of $6 million has given us benefits of over $45 million over the next 15 years, which provides a cost benefit of 6 to 1, which is a fantastic outcome. And again, it validates the planning that we are doing is in the right best interest of the city. We've reduced queues on Mirrabina Drive down to less than 100 metres. We've reduced delays down to less than 1 minute. So this is a fantastic result, and we continue doing what we're doing to make sure that we're delivering the best outcomes for our community. As we know, an efficient freight network is important for our economic viability of the city. So we have some weigh in motion sites located in a number of areas across the city, and we looking at the difference from the industrial context as well as the urban context environment. We're also looking at the difference of the size of the or the freight vehicles. So from this we can see the industrial context of Stanmore Road. The heavy vehicles, sorry, I should mention that the dotted line is the vehicles carrying 3 to 10 tonnes, and then the bar charts are the higher or the larger vehicles or heavier vehicles. So what we can see in the industrial context, the 3 to 10 tonne vehicles follow a similar daily profile as a normal vehicle, and in the urban context they have a high PM peak. We can also see that the larger vehicles that are 10 tonne plus have a flatter daily profile, and their main movements are around 11 a.m. and midday. This is informing, once again, our investment program, but not only that, our maintenance program for our pavement. We know the impact of heavy vehicles on our pavement and the cost of that to the city. So this is also contributing to informing that, and understanding these trends and also the difference of the profiles is really important to make sure we have the right approach for each area of the city. It's not just a one approach fits all, so we need to consider that as we do our detailed planning. Road safety. Our road safety targets, so by 2030 we want to reduce the rate of fatalities by 50% per 100,000 population, and also serious injuries by 30% of 100,000 population. What the information here is showing us is that up until mid-October of this year, we reported 5 fatalities on the city road network and 11 on the state-controlled network. We also can see that we are declining in fatalities as a longer-term trend, which is fantastic, and we've had a slightly less reduction in serious injuries of around 7% reduction in 22 when compared to the previous year. Overall, the Gold Coast performed better than Queensland when comparing the annual average rate per 100,000 for both fatalities and serious injuries. We also have implemented a filter right turn program this year, which is removing some of the filter right turns, which is creating a safer road environment for our community. Parking. The parking has 18,000 regulated parking spaces. Off-street on-street parking, I should say, sits between the 60 to 80%, the 40 to 60% occupancy band. So this is lower than last year, but we also have 50% of our on-street parking spaces that are used for a maximum stay of up to 30 minutes. So that turnover of parking is what we want to achieve in our business districts, and it also is likely contributing to that lower occupancy rate. When we compared that to a spot check that we did for the off-street parking, that had an occupancy rate of 80 to 100%, which demonstrates that longer-term parking provides greater occupancy and usage. So our strategies from our parking plan are helping to manage our parking better across the city as a whole. The information on the left is TransLink data, and it shows that we have an increase in ridership on public transport as a whole in 2022-23 compared to the previous financial year. It also shows that we're still slightly down compared to pre-COVID patronage by about 5%. Light rail is leading the charge, and the last information that we had available shows that light rail is now nearly 97% back to pre-COVID levels, and anecdotal evidence shows that it's even better now and could have even surpassed that. So it's a fantastic result for light rail as a whole. The household travel survey data shows a 7% reduction in public transport usage for work trips. While this appears disappointing, people working from home is a likely contributor to this reduction. Again, we've done a case study here just to demonstrate some of the investment, not so much infrastructure this time, but in public transport services. And in partnership with TransLink, we invested $16.4 million to provide an uplift to 5 bus services in the northern area of the Gold Coast. This year, this has seen a patronage increase of 25,000 people, which is awesome. And it shows us if we provide reliable and efficient services, then people will use them. We need to do this to ensure we combat the growth in population in that northern area. But this is a significant success story. By the time we implement the third phase of this project, we will have uplifted additional 700 bus services in the northern suburbs. Hopo ferry service continues to grow in popularity with both locals and visitors, and in the 2022-23 financial year, patronage increased by 49% compared to the previous year, which is fantastic. That means 90,000 people used the service in that year, and April was our most popular month and continues to be so. The city also continues to support the community by providing and promoting affordable, accessible transport options for seniors and veterans with free travel and council cab services. This is so important to ensure our transport system has inclusivity for all people in our community. Active transport, walking as a mode of transport remains around the city's 8% target range, which again is a great outcome. And our active transport counters that we have around the city are showing pedestrian volumes have increased when compared to the previous year. The household travel survey that's been shown there on the screen shows that walking for social recreational purposes as a percentage of the overall walking trips has increased by 13%. It's also showing walking for other purposes has dropped off. This could again be attributed to more people working from home, so less people walking to work, but also people shopping online, and things like Uber Eats for teenage children could also be the reason why people walking for those drop-off, pick-up, delivery are declining. Again, with cycling, we have the household travel survey up there, and again, the city's active transport counters are showing that cycling volumes have increased over the past 12 months and consistently over the 14,000 mark. The fluctuations from seasonal adjustments have tended to have dropped, which means that cycling is being used as a mode of transport on a regular basis. So trips for education and shopping as a percentage of all cycling trips have decreased, though the proportion of trips for work, social, recreation and pick-up, drop-up are higher. And again, this could be attributed to the use of e-bikes for things like deliveries and so on and so forth. This year's report includes a section on our personal mobility device usage across the city. And whilst we have seen, I'm sure we all agree, an increase in the use of the PMDs, it still remains a very small proportion of the overall active travel usage across the city at less than 2%. But by monitoring this, we can then understand where the trends are across the city and ensure we address them as we move forward. We still have our speed limits in place, so just a reminder that it's 25 kilometre speed limit on separated bike paths and roads and 12 kilometres on shared footpaths. The Lime bike share scheme continues to be popular. It's operated by Lime and has attracted more than 300,000 individual users, which equates to about 1.5 million trips. It's also contributing to reduced congestion on our road network, reduced CO2 emissions, and it's also helping to change travel behaviours. So a recent survey by Lime identified 60% of users made a purchase at a local store after trialling Steam. So what that's telling us is hopefully this is a sustained travel choice moving forward. The third case study is the Surfers South Ocean Way. So this is another success story for the city. It's a 1.6 kilometre, 4 metre wide connection, and since it's been completed in March of this year, we've seen an increase in usage of over 80%. So that's over 6,000 users per day, which again is a fantastic result. And it validates that we build this infrastructure and people use it. And I'm proud to say it recently was the winner of the IPWEA Queensland Northern Territory Excellence Award for projects between $5 to $10 million. So again, fantastic outcome. The last section is travel demand management, and this is encouraging people to change their behaviour, and starting with the active school travel program, we're targeting our youngest travellers on the network in the hope that we will provide sustained travel choices. This year, the number of participants was 20 schools, but since its inception, since 2012, we've had 50 primary schools and 3 high schools included in the program. The successes of the program this year include over 500,000 car trips being taken off the road network in 2023 and a reduction of CO2 of 1,000 metric tonnes is the estimate from the program this year. The city's also investing in the Safest Route to Schools program through infrastructure upgrades of our active transport network around schools to again attract our young users to walk and cycle and ride to school. And in addition, we've had more than 200 community workshops that are dedicated to improving bike education and safety, and that was delivered under the Community Active Travel program. So you can see from this report the importance of having accurate and reliable data to be able to report on how we're performing at the road network and also the transport network. But also this data is also used to provide intelligent-led decision-making for our investments moving forward. And not only that, we use this data for real-time operations of a road network, so we can respond quickly when we have incidents that we need to respond to quickly. So I will ask Phil to come up and just give you a brief demonstration of the data program and where we're up to. But if anyone is wanting further information, then we'd be very happy to provide more updates throughout the year. Thanks, Phil.
Thanks, Alison. Yeah.
Often when producing reports like you've seen before, over here, often when producing reports like you've seen just before, the data that we need to actually include some of these graphs are either screen lines or surveys or often small sample sizes that we have to extrapolate out to get a good understanding of the network. A few years ago, we embarked on a journey to capitalize on an opportunity to use operational data for longer term patterns and understanding what's happening on the network. The first use case we used was streams data, which comes from our Signal network. We're collecting at the moment roughly 19,000 sensors at 5-minute intervals at 2 billion records a year. So to use all that data, we can get 365, 24/7 understanding. There are limitations on some of this data that because it's out in the field, it's often succumbed to minor errors or inconsistencies. However, by using it as trend projections, you can get a better understanding across the coast. As everyone would know here, we are a longitudinal city and we're quite diverse. So what's happening in Surfers is not always a good representation of what's happening down south or up north. So by having more sensors, we can get a better idea of what's happening. The video I've prepared today is a live demonstration. I did it in the second take. So it's a single continuous video of just me clicking through some slides to demonstrate the capability. We aligned ourselves with the state government with the platform we've used, which is Tableau, which is just a business intelligence tool to try assist us with aggregating the different levels of information. Hopefully that works. Yep, there we go. So I'm just signing in here. It's fairly responsive and quick, so we're just going to go through some dashboards and I'll just talk through them as we go. So in here, we're going through the volume data that I mentioned before. So this first dashboard is an aggregation of the entire city for a year. You can see your traditional AM peak, PM peak, and weekend humps there. It is quite quick, sorry. So we got every day of the week there, Monday through to Sunday, different profiles that you can see. By collecting this data, we've got Surfers Paradise. It's... I'm not sure I'll be able to pause and talk at the same time.
Does it keep going? You
Yeah, it's
can't
just one
pause it.
continuous video, so it's just a live video of me clicking.
But you could reproduce that slide for us and circulate it.
Exactly.
Thank
So
you.
what I'm trying to demonstrate there is just some capability of outside of this session where we're not looking at a strategic high-level overview, that we can actually drill down into individual divisions or areas.
So through you, Madam Chair, there's an opportunity for each of you to have a discussion with Phil and the team about what's pertinent for your particular division.
Yeah, right. I think I'll just start again, sorry. So what it's really just showing is how for different use cases, you need different levels of information. For an officer, what we need can be quite granular at times versus what, say, management or yourselves require, which can often be quite aggregated information. So this is just showing different days of the week, how it can change. So a Friday can be very different from the weekend and why that's important to know. Here we've got Surfers Paradise, which has a really high PM peak, which compared to Pacific Pines, which I'm about to show, is a very different profile. So when we're analysing and we're trying to aggregate it for the network, it's really important to understand these differences. So here you can see the really high AM peak, PM peak for all the different days of the week, but also aggregating it back into weekend, weekday. On the next dashboard, I'm showing a baseline comparison. Again, this is just for demonstration purposes, but you've got actual data for the time period there versus a baseline time period. You can zoom in to where the sensors are. So in this case, it's Ashmore Road. Select where you want to view, and you can really drill down into the different levels of information. Again, being a dashboard, you've got all the normal filters. So division, day of the week, suburb. It is geospatial data, so it's very interactive if needed. So it's taken quite a while to produce all this, but now it's quite responsive and clean UI. There are some exceptions like the motorway, but vast majority. Here we can select a corridor, so if you don't want to just look at a single intersection or detector, you can go up to a corridor or a full network. So it's allowing different levels of aggregation, as I mentioned, for different requirements. This one is looking at a larger sample, so your network. So this is just looking at the horizons of, say, a year, 2 years, 3 years, what's happening at a general level, and why it's important to filter down. So you can see there on that black line, that's a baseline, but if you remove weekends, because when you're aggregating weekdays and weekends, you're distorting information, as well as school holidays, public holidays, days of the week, as I said before. So here we're going to show Friday between the time period, and then aggregate it between a week aggregation versus a quarterly aggregation versus a yearly aggregation. So the issue with the modern day is there's so much data out there, and how you make it simple is the challenge. So this is why we've gone through the time to make it as usable as possible for us. So there, I'm just extending the horizon so you can see a multi-year period. There was COVID, so some of the impacts on the transport network there as volumes dropped and recovered. And when you change your different levels of view, what happens there as well. So we did these dashboards about a year ago. And since then, we've been working on some new usable ones. I'm just about to show you in a second, just the prototypes we're working on to try and make this information even better. We recognize that there's still a fair bit of work to do, but it's important to progress to keep this large sample size and use it to understand what's happening across the network when we do get spot check information. So in this visual here, we're just looking at a corridor. I think it's Yawalpa Road. So some baseline versus actual volume profiles, time of day, the individual detectors you can see there. So trying to cater for what we need at an operational level all the way up to what's important to know across the city. So there was a bit of a challenge there. And then this second one is just looking at the intersection itself. So again, just some nice visuals of the different things we can do once we've got the data. This next dashboard I'm about to show you is the active transport counters. So unlike the streams data, which was just for operational purposes, we've transformed. We install these counters for the purpose of data. So what you're going to see there is pedestrians, cyclists, other being PMDs and forms of transport, some trend lines, how they track across the day in a 24-hour period, your different types, days of the week, all that sort of stuff as well can be pulled out because it's geospatial time information. Here we're going to look at an individual counter. So whereas before it was aggregated information, we can drill down into a single location. So again, time of day, knowing your user base, your active transport users in that area. For Sundale Bridge, which is where this counter is, you can see a large utilization during the day and some during the night, but predominantly as you'd expect during the day. Changing your month here, we can just see what happens at different periods of the year, which is why it's so important. So if you've got a count there for a week, by using this information, you can discern, was that a normal week? Can we trust this information from that smaller sample? This next example is Schuster Park, which is near a school, so you can really see your PM peak for the school kids and recreational use on the weekend. So again, different utilization at the location is very important to know because it's got different user bases. So it's a combination of sensors. So there's a infrared overhead sensor there, as well as piezoelectric strips on the ground for cyclists.
Thanks.
And that was just a presentation on where we're headed with some of this data to better inform the reports we get and have more trustworthy data when we're trying to extrapolate from smaller samples. On the next slide, I've just got a very interesting use case where I've pulled out some of these numbers to demonstrate why it's important. So this counter here is on Nerang Broadbeach Road between the train station and Carrara Stadium, or Heritage Bank Stadium. The counter there, if you were to get it on any normal day of the week, you're looking at about 200 active users. But if pulling out some of the different time frames, so when the Suns had a home game, you got large volumes there. Or when Harry Styles played, we had about 7,000 people. or more recently, Paul McCartney as well. So it can demonstrate the value of this infrastructure, that at different points in time, it's heavily used, even if at a daily level, it's not always as high. So by having that longer term patterns and understanding of what's happening out on the network, you can get a better understanding of how the infrastructure is used. Thank you. We do have a program moving forward to install more of the active transport sensors, yes.
Thanks.
I'm going to go to councillor Gates first, then I'll go to councillor Taylor, and if anyone else has questions.
Sorry, through the chair, I just had a question about the sensors.
Yep.
Where are they located in the north of the city?
The active transport counters? I can get back to you on that one, councillor. I'll take them.
Okay, I have a few questions. Do you want me to go for them all?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. At the outset, it was suggested this is a strategic report in nature. It's probably not a question for you. The last time we got a State of the Transport Network report, Foxwell Road, as the second busiest road in the city, was left out. This time round, we see that the northern Gold Coast traffic has grown by 50%, as opposed to 20% in coastal regions, and Foxwell Road is indeed in this year, but there's absolutely no strategic plan that's included in this report. And I don't pay any disrespect to officers because I know work is underway, but I'm very perplexed at why there's nothing in the report, even to indicate that there is some work underway, because when you look at the numbers on page 26 and you see, can you tell me, are there counts done in the different sections? So, for example, where it says Coomera Link Road, Foxwell Road at 44,000 vehicles a day, is that the whole length of Foxwell Road? Or should I be adding the 27,000 from Shipper Drive to exit 54 and the 10,800 east of Amity?
You want to answer?
Yeah. Through you, Madam Chair. So on the map there, there's those dots with the numbers and the letters. That is the precise location that the count was taken.
Sorry, on which map?
On page 26. So on the map there, the numbers and the letters relate to where the count was taken. Because they're a spot count, we're just presenting the volumes at that particular location.
So I should be adding 44,000, 27,000 and 10,800?
Think of it like a tree, big trunk.
So it's 44,000 vehicles a day for the length of Foxwell Road?
At that location, yes.
Okay, and that's fine, but can someone explain to me how it doesn't appear in the report anywhere when it's the highest growth in Northern Gold Coast with Uwalpa as well, and there's a whole lot of information about other stuff, but there's no mention other than it being the highest growth in traffic volume. No mention of what our strategic aim is for that area, which, and as I say, I know the office is doing something. Days Road is mentioned, Helensvale Road, Discovery Drive, and yet I can't see anything strategic in this report to tackle that.
Through you, Madam Chair. Councillor Gates, on page 30 of the report, we have a list of the significant infrastructure projects that are underway, and approximately 50% of those are in the northern area.
Okay, well, let's go through them. Most of them are in Division 1, and the improvements that were suggested at Mirrambina Drive serve a large lot area travelling out to rural. So I'm not surprised there's been an improvement there, because there's no high-density properties at all.
Councillor Gates, it serves the 12,000 people that get onto the highway by exit 41. Or sorry, 45 South.
Sorry, yeah, it's not even the right name, but
Yeah.
anyway.
So the
I know what it does,
12,000
Mark.
vehicles that go through the intersection to get onto the highway is probably who it serves, not
Thank
so
you
much
for
the
the
rural
help.
resi.
Thank you for the help. I served it for 12 years. I know what it does.
I don't remember that.
I do.
Oh, come on. What? Whoa. I'm going to make you go sit next to him.
It's okay. Can you tell me, please, what's underway at Foxwell and Amity at this point in time?
Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Gates, there is planning underway for Foxwell and Amity. If you want further information on the strategic plan for the north, very happy to consider that and provide
Look,
that
I
level
know
of
there's-
detail.
There's planning, but it's for stage 2 of Coomera Connector, for which there's no business case and no funding. So there's nothing happening there other than the installation of traffic signals, which has already occurred. And I know I got annoyed last time when Foxwell was completely left out of the equation, because it is where most of the growth is. And again, it's here, but there's nothing. Anyway, the Mayor did a Merrill Minute a few weeks ago, and I know that it has activated the officers and they're dealing with TMR, but it's just really disappointing that this is our report and it doesn't focus on the second busiest road in the city. It's very disappointing, and I'm just grateful to the Mayor that he did his Merrill Minute, because otherwise I'd be nowhere. So that's all right, thank you.
Any more questions, councillor Gates?
No.
No.
Thank you.
I'll go to councillor Taylor next, thank you.
Thank you, and through the chair, the integration of our traffic light signalisation from council into state through light rail, which seems to be causing a lot of angst, particularly from Pacific Fair right through to, I'd say, the southern side part of surface. Is there any progression in relation to collaborating to get a network that's going to sync together? My understanding is the current network overruns our signalisation, then puts our whole network totally out, which causes major congestion. Is there any update or?
Because interested in getting east-west happening, right?
Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Taylor. Yes, it certainly is a constraint that the light rail, we cannot coordinate the signals along the Gold Coast Highway because the light rail does get priority. We do continually investigate other alternatives out there. We have had some workshops with Transport for London in recent times to understand how they operate their network over there. They have different traffic signal management systems, Scoot. New South Wales have a different signal system called SCATS, where we operate the stream system. So we're continually investigating the opportunities there. If we were to change systems, which is not off the cards, I could say, but there is significant investment in the infrastructure, and the example there would be the loop detectors would need to be replaced, and that is a significant investment.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Just on this, I think it was the only councillor who voted against us supporting the demaining of that section of the Gold Coast Highway that runs from Broadbeach, I think, all the way to Burleigh. And this is linked to the light rail and its delivery. Do officers have a sense of whether we will have operational control over these intersections once the road is demained, or will we inherit the asset without the ability to integrate it in a way that might be in keeping with our preference for traffic flow?
Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Vorster. My understanding that, yes, the demaining will go ahead and then we will take operational control, but I would need to confirm that.
Yeah, so, Madam Chair, I think that's just worth noting, through you to Councillor Taylor. It's a massive issue, but once it becomes our asset, by all rights, and sure, we need to incorporate the tram, of course, but by all rights, we should have the ability to begin sort of changing things in keeping with our worldview. So it might not happen tomorrow, but within the next 3 years. Yeah.
Is it on that? Yes.
So there have been questions in regards to the traffic lights in that, I'm going to say, Broadbeach to surface section. Do we have any line of sight as to what the volume of people being moved on a daily basis is by the light rail? Because we give light rail a priority because it moves people. Do we know how many people that is in that section and what that would equate to if it was people in cars?
Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Owen-Jones. We can obtain that data. We need to get that data from TransLink, so we need to get that permission before we can release that data, but I can certainly follow up on that for you.
If you don't mind, Chair, I was going to ask a similar question. If we could map the major public transport links and what sort of patronage they're enjoying or is being provided, because that would give, you know, if we're really going to integrate public transport into our network of moving people, then it's good to have that map similarly as we have for roads.
Yeah. Through you, Madam Chair. Sorry. Councillor, yeah, we can ask permission to obtain that data and provide that information, but you're absolutely right. It's about the movement of people and goods rather than vehicles. So, yeah, if we have permission from TransLink, then we'll certainly provide that data.
Was there any other questions, Councillor Young? Yep.
Don't mind. I just want to comment on this amazing figure on page 22, which is that on any weekday, the average travel distance of all vehicles in the city is about 20 million kilometres every weekday. It's just a phenomenal figure, and that's a big task for us to, you know, we should bear that in mind in our decision making. I had a question or a few questions about this mapping on page 26, which shows the average daily traffic volumes. Because we haven't included on this map at all anything for the M1, and I would think that that's important consideration, even though it's not our responsibility. It's good for us to know what that's looking like, because in the future we'll be tracking that and the performance of the Coomera connector and how it might impact upon the volumes on the M1 at different locations. So I noticed that's a bit of an something that's not been included, unfortunately. Similarly, on the State Road network, on that map, there's nothing for Smith Street, either side of the motorway, and I would have thought Smith Street is a pretty major arterial connector out of Southport to the M1, so it just, I don't know why that would be missing. Have you got any ideas, please? Through you, Chair.
Through you, Madam Chair, Councillor Young. So for that data set, we're pulling it from the state government's open data portal. It seems for that year they decided not to take account. We have been trying to be more proactive in that approach to understand where there's missing data so that we can try work with the state to find data, like Foxwell Road. This year they hadn't done it account closer to the interchange. However, we had data from when we still own that section. So we are trying to improve that space.
Okay, that'd be handy because that is a major connection up to the motorway at least. And then even west of the motorway, there's Smith Street going to Pack Pines, and that I'm sure would have an appreciable volume of traffic. It's not mapped at all. Likewise, on that same map, we've got number 6, which is Binstead Way, heading into Pack Pines, and then it just stops, the count stops, and then from a certain point, it just seems to be a nothing road. And I would imagine that the rest of that road experiences a pretty high volume of traffic as well, similar to or more than some of the other roads that we've mapped. So I wonder why we've excluded that. Is it just a matter that we don't have a data point there, or? Then my question earlier about us putting out more sensors wasn't particularly about active travel, but about vehicles, because we've got major holes.
Through you, Madam Chair. Councillor Young, so we do have the other data set that I presented earlier in the video. We have not included that in this graph here because we're taking it from tube counts. For this, we wanted to have consistency across the data sets that we were using, but we can certainly look into that.
Thank you. And then on the following maps, you've got the AM and PM peaks, and there's some roads there west of the motorway in Nerang, like Alexander Drive and I think what must be Gilston Road and Pappas Way. And none of those are mapped on your earlier map showing the traffic volumes on main roads or arterial roads. So that confused me. And again, Smith Street west of the motorway, just nothing. And I can't believe that it's that it should be excluded from this sort of report, and that's why I'm noting myself. We're just asked to note this report, and I'm okay to note it, but I wouldn't want to be relying upon this as a means to identify future roadwork priorities. I would reject that because there's clearly missing data, Chair. Thanks.
Thanks. So I've just got a couple of quick questions. I note the example of the Ocean Way and how successful it is. Could you just refresh my memory what the next section of the Ocean Way will be?
Through the chair, the next section of the Ocean Way, we're looking at Main Beach.
Yep.
We have to wait until the sand is replenished on Main Beach. Councillor Taylor is very much aware of that project. Once that's completed, it will pretty much get it all up to the spit. There's a couple of other missing links, a section through Mermaid Beach. What's that? The TMR part through Burleigh, which is getting constructed with Gold Coast Light Rail 3, and we're also doing a business case now for the northern section of Currumbin. And once that's done, I think there's about 13 little missing links, all where the current Ocean Way isn't up to the current standard. And once those all are done, we will have a 36-kilometre Ocean Way from the Spit to Coolangatta.
Excellent. There was a slide that showed that we'd contributed $16.4 million to the state's transport network in the north through the bus program, and that, my understanding is that was a pilot to show that it had legs. Have we reached the point where it will most likely be taken over by the state at the end of that pilot?
Yeah, so that $16 million is total.
Yep.
Our contribution is 8.
Yep.
It's over 3 stages. So stage 2 has commenced, and there's one more stage which is commencing in July next year. But TMR, given its success, and Councillor Hamill, Councillor Gates will be able to attest to this. It's been a huge success.
Well, I might have to attest on their two behalves at the moment. So.
Yeah, we've got to wait until stage 3. Obviously, there's a couple of new services going in, one out to Jacobs Well, and we're improving the services to Beenleigh.
So is our gut feeling that they will take them on at the end of the pilot program?
It's been very successful, and they have said that it's because of the success, they want to actually use the Gold Coast as an example for other local governments, such as Moreton Bay and Sunshine Coast, to help uplift in high growth areas.
So the state's making a major investment at some stage in a new heavy rail station at Hope Island, where they're undersupplying the number of car parks. Do you know whether or not they intend to extend their public transport through the bus services to connect to that heavy rail?
They have indicated that once all 3 new heavy rail stations are built, so Merrimack, Hope Island and Pimpamar, that they will have to be doing some rerouting and some rationalisation of services into and out of.
And have they had any preliminary conversations with us about the city having to contribute to any pilot programs to make those work, or are they just going to do them?
No.
Okay. There was a slide that showed parking in Southport and Nerang at being the lowest of all of the areas. Have we given any consideration to reducing the pricing points in those 2 areas to increase use? There's no fee? Perfect.
So there's no paid parking in Nerang. And Southport, you might recall, we put a report up, Councillor Patterson, probably about 18 months ago. And we've got dynamic pricing now in
on the street or off street?
Definitely on street. We have dynamic pricing. I'm not quite sure about off street.
Okay, thank you. On page 28, there's a D rating for the western section of Helensvale Road, closest to, I'm going to say, Saganto Drive's entry onto the M1. Do we have any views on what the change may be to that section with the delivery of volume from the Coomera connector in 2027, 2028?
So when stage 1 north of Coomera connector is open, as you know, Councillor, it's going to increase traffic on Helensvale Road for a period of time. and possibly on Discovery Drive as well. So we're working through that with TMR. But once the whole of Stage 1 of Coomera Connector is open, it is hoped that traffic on that particular section of Helensvale Road will either stay stagnant or reduce.
And my final question was just in regards to data collection and data points. We have however many spots on our road network where we put our speed awareness devices, which are traffic counters. Is there any opportunity for that information to be shown as part of this report in the future?
Through you, Madam Chair. Councillor Owen-Jones, yeah, absolutely. I would suggest that we meet with you independently and just identify any specific locations that you're interested in, and we'll make sure that we have some data for those.
I suppose if we look at page 26, where you pulled out 21 roads that are on our network where we're measuring volume, I actually think that that another page that showed kind of the next layer down of the roads, so Monterey Keys Drive, Michigan Drive, Discovery Drive, just that also showed those lower volumes. I think it would give us a better appreciation of the feathering of the numbers from the big roads as they go further into the network.
So through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Owen-Jones, this data comes from doing counts at a certain location and a certain week of the year. We have an annual program where we're trying to keep the locations consistent, so we build that trend analysis. So the more locations we do, the greater the cost to the council for doing those counts. But combined with the data that Phil showed earlier, we can get those trend analysis, so we can drill down into every location where we have an intersection. We can get some counts via a trend analysis, but we can definitely rationalise if you would like additional data points in future years.
I think it would help, particularly north of the Nerang River.
Go to Councillor Taylor now. No more? Okay. Councillor Forster.
I'm happy to move the item.
Okay, I'm happy to second that item. Councillors, there was no other questions. Councillor Hammer, you had no contribution there. Okay, that's fine. Councillors, we are noting the report that we've received today and also the data presentation that Phil gave us, which I think is insightful in knowing that the city is actually improving the level of data and not data that's 3 or 4 years old. So I think it's going in the right direction. So I'm happy to take the vote on that. All those in favour of noting the report, that's carried unanimously. Those against don't need to. Thank you for that. Councillor Forster, you had a general business question?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I just had a couple of very brief questions and then 2 proposed GBIs, but feel free to rule them out of order. The first one concerns a smashed up vehicle. Just west of the Varsity College Junior Campus is a smashed up blue Holden Barina that is hanging partway into the actual traffic lane, across a bike lane and on a footpath. It's covered in police tape. Police don't seem in a hurry to do anything about it. It's been there for a week. And I suppose my question is, at what point does council have some jurisdiction to move on what I would regard as a severe traffic safety issue on a very busy road corridor? Well, a CR has been raised, but I've seen no action. So I'm just trying to understand what the service level is.
So through you, Madam Chair. The policy that relates to those abandoned vehicles or vehicles that have been stolen and left abandoned on the road doesn't sit within infrastructure department, but I can certainly take that on notice and come back to you with a response.
Yeah, thank you. Given that sits within the, I suppose, on the infrastructure asset, it'd be good to follow up. I might drop you a pin. My other question relates to our pedestrian, I don't know what you call them, like pedestrian sensors. now correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm just connecting a few dots here, but there appear to be some signalised pedestrian crossings at intersections where we may have what I assume is an ultrasound detector sitting on a traffic signal pointing to the, I don't know what you call it, the holding bay, the curb ramp, whatever you want to call it. Would I be correct? And do those devices use ultrasound?
Through the chair, I'm not actually familiar with the technology myself, but it's called a puffin crossing. So, yeah, did you want to talk to that, Al?
Through the chair, the technology is microwave.
Microwave, okay. And do you know what? So being microwave are very, very, very interesting. This is better than ultrasound. So that would sit in the, what, 2.35, 2.4 gigahertz range?
Typically 2.4.
Okay, so I'm going to throw something at you. Please take it on notice or just rule it out as completely insane. Over the last little while, I've had residents complain about their Bluetooth devices cutting out at particular locations. I've kind of dismissed it as maybe a handset error, but enough people have flagged it with me that I thought I'd throw something up on social media and to see whether people had been experiencing the same issues. And the locations that people nominated as areas where they see a sudden drop-off in their connections and interference with Apple CarPlay over Bluetooth seem to be, I think, when people have pulled up to intersections and are waiting in the lane closest to these microwave emitters. I can find no other ACMA registered radio device that could possibly be causing interference. The Australian Communications and Medias Authority, something like that. So they're the regulator of our, part regulator of our EMF, yeah, no, the EMF spectrum. Anyway, I just wonder whether city officers could possibly investigate whether that equipment is operating within the design specifications, because I strongly suspect they may be interfering with these wireless devices. I legitimately think that's what's going on. So if city officers could just maybe get a spectrum analyzer and just take a look at that. It could be that we've got defective...
I'll say you wear an outfall.
I reckon you are all going to eat humble pie when it turns out that I'm right.
Could officers confirm that you also shut off microphones in chambers?
Through you, Madam Chair. Look, we can take that question on notice. We can certainly investigate the technology and whether there's any reference to interference through the actual technology provider. I don't know that we'll go down the road of doing our own research to determine.
Look, a spectrum analyzer's, like, you can pick one up from JB Hi-Fi, and if we don't have an appetite to do it, we could engage the likes of the Gold Coast Amateur Radio Club. They're a community group housed on the Gold Coast. I'm sure their volunteers would come up and help city officers, but I think it's a case of defective equipment potentially creating a traffic hazard, because if your device drops out, you could be distracted as you're navigating a busy intersection. So. Yeah, anyway, those are my two questions. Yeah. And Madam Chair, I just have 2 GBs that I'd like to offer up for the benefit of the room.
Go for it.
So send those to chamber support. I'm going to go analyse your spectrum, mate. I was going to say, you sit on the left. I'm a little bit more centre-right.
We're going to put your apple pie in the mic.
Self-aware. Self-aware.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm obviously in your hands and those of our colleagues here. But I've got a recommendation here that city officers engage with Varsity College and the Department of Education to investigate options to reconfigure Assembly Drive, Varsity Lakes, at state government expense to improve safety, parking and development outcomes in the area. So I'm not proposing any expenditure of ratepayer dollars. I'd just like our officers to be working with the department because it's a very big school. They're crossing a road at the moment very dangerously. There's a dearth of staff car parking, and if the state government think that they can do a better job planning that street, I'd like us to take a look.
Could I second that, please? So ultimately, the officers may wish to write to the state member for the area and seek funding.
Ray Stevens.
Number 2, please, Councillor Vorster.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. This won't affect me directly, but it may be useful to the next council. There is a Wombat crossing. So good. Again, Madam Chair, I'm not going to die in a ditch on this, but I think it will be useful to the next council that an annual report be prepared in consultation with councillors to identify and nominate worthwhile projects under the School Transport Infrastructure Program or successor programs. And if thank you, Madam Chair. If I could just talk very briefly to that. The state government has funding available to co-invest in infrastructure around schools on local roads, but in order for projects to be eligible, they need to be identified and nominated by the local government. And at the moment, we don't have a process to deal with every councillor to make sure that we are identifying projects that can be investigated, ruled in, ruled out, and then submitted to the state government as part of their annual invitation for nominations. And I think this would give the council an ability to prioritise investments, backing those projects that don't necessarily have 100% funding locked in from the ratepayer. We could do more with less.
Moved by Councillor Vorster, seconded by myself. All those in favour? That is carried. Councillors, that's the last of our agenda items and our GB items. Just being the last Transport and Infrastructure Committee meeting of 2023, I just wanted to say a big thank you to all the officers. It's been quite a year for changes within council, and they've still maintained delivery of reports and managed most of our, or if not all of our, council requests going forward. So just thank you to the team, and appreciate all your hard work, and look forward to next year. All right, thank you.
Yeah, Mitch Elton used to buy us a chocolate.
Chocolate Santa.
I need to ask some of the other officers what my reputation is.
And the meeting closed at 14:11. Thank you, everybody.